Voters will decide whether or not to legalize marijuana right here in the state of Arizona. It's called Prop 205. We talk to Yes on 205. Welcome to the Mik Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people.
Hey, thanks for being here. JP Holyoak, who is the guy in charge of Yes on 205, the legalization of marijuana here in Arizona, joins the show in just a few moments. We start off every show the same way. It's something we call The Sweep, and it's sponsored by our good friends at Zero Res Carpet and Tile Cleaning. It's like it always is. We got to start off with the campaigns, and there's nothing like what's going on right now. Trump and Clinton head-to-head, and the polls are closing. The gap is narrowing. The last polls I saw this week showed Donald Trump winning by 2 in Florida, winning by 4 in Ohio, closing the gap in Pennsylvania. He's closed the gap and pulled from 5 down to 2 up here in the state of Arizona. As a matter of fact, CNN took their electoral map and flipped Florida to a toss-up and Arizona to a toss-up from leaning Democrat. So Donald Trump seems to have the momentum going his way. Giving speeches this week, talking about a new deal for African Americans and what I think is a good idea to try to appeal to some of the African American voters who cannot be happy with the way things are with our economy. But the biggest issue that's happening right now are these WikiLeaks emails. The fact is, Hillary Clinton is running from this in the wrong way. Every time in the debate and all of her surrogates on TV, as soon as somebody mentions the emails, they say, well, you know, the Russians in an act of espionage are trying to undermine our electoral system. Stop it. Somebody stole Donald Trump's tax returns. They didn't have any problem putting those out to people. The information in these are damning. Pay attention to it, even if, especially if you're a Clinton supporter. I'm not asking you to change your vote. I'm just saying take a look at who you're electing president. If you're trying to vote her into office, there's corruption at the State Department and working with the Clinton Foundation. Now we find out, of all people, Chelsea Clinton was upset, running the foundation, saying we need to run this more professionally. Inside the Clinton Foundation, the group that was in charge of promotions, promoting donations to the foundation and promoting Bill Clinton, was doing both at the same time. And Chelsea was basically saying, are we a charity or are we not a charity? This guy got so upset, he called Chelsea a spoiled brat, said he had $50 million in Bill Clinton funds with another $66 million in speeches on the books, and her parents would be broke if it weren't for him. He ended up leaving the foundation. All of this is there in the emails. So that is the biggest thing that's chasing her right now. Locally in the election, Sheriff Joe Arpaio was officially charged with criminal contempt about the business raids. His defense is that they were not going after illegal immigrants, and that's what the judge told him not to do, that they were enforcing identity theft laws. So that is what in a criminal court will be his defense. The problem is the election is November 8th. His trial date is not until December. So is this going to damage Sheriff Joe Arpaio's chance of getting reelected as Maricopa County Sheriff? And finally, the big news story of the week is Obamacare. I want you to hear President Obama as he talks about the spin because rates are going up at their count by 25%. Watch the president.
And the net result is that never in American history has the uninsured rate been lower than it is today. Never.
You know, I spent $50,000 on my '78 Pontiac, and it drives like a dream. It's never driven better. Was it worth 75 grand? It's crazy. But now Donald Trump has more accurate numbers, and he's telling people what this election is all about, and this is what's positive for him. Watch Trump.
Obamacare is just blowing up, and even the White House, our president, announced 25 or 26%. That number is so wrong. That is such a phony number. You're talking about 60, 70, 80% in increases, not 25%.
The hypothetical 27-year-old male that's healthy, single, in the state of Arizona, last year would have paid about $196 a month for insurance. That same policy next year is going to cost that young man $422 a month. Obamacare is going to break the American economy if it's not fixed. They can put lipstick on that pig all they want to. It's never going to work. They've They've got to revamp this system. All right, in a few moments, JP Holyoak joins the show. He is the chairman of the Pro 205, which is the legalization of marijuana. Compelling interview because I am no on 205, but it's a very good interview I hope you'll stick around for. We're going to do that here in just a few minutes on the show. We're going to get to this interview here in just a moment. But first, my friends at Zero Res. Zero Res Carpet and Tile Cleaning have always got a great special every month for you, but it's the product. Just the other day, I cook at my house. I have a white stovetop. I was cooking pork chops at my house, and when I was done, to clean the stove, I just used the spray bottle of the empowered water. No soaps, no chemicals, just water. And it cleans like an effective cleaner. Imagine what it can do with your carpets. No soap residue left behind. They dry faster. They stay cleaner longer. So for all of your carpet cleaning needs, there's one place to call. It's the good people at Zero Res. All right, Prop 205, the legalization of marijuana here in the state of Arizona. I have said that I am against passing 205, but we want to be equal. So we're bringing in the yes on 205. JP Holyoak is with us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Your chance, convince me, and I'll tell you at the outset, it's not so much about marijuana being legalized for me. I'm just not a fan of the way this prop is written. So convince me that this is the right thing to do, or the viewers, that this is the right thing to do.
Well, this isn't a matter of yes marijuana or no marijuana, or marijuana is good or marijuana is bad. The choice that we have before us is, are we going to continue the failed policies of prohibition? Or are we going to tax and regulate this and send those dollars to our schools? Or are we simply going to keep it illegal for the enrichment of criminal drug dealers? So you don't have to be in favor of marijuana to be opposed to prohibition. This is a pragmatic argument.
That part I agree with, in the sense of I've never smoked marijuana in my life, for full disclosure, and I have a lot of friends that have and do. Mm-hmm. So I have nothing against people that smoke marijuana. To me, it's not about that. And I don't know that if the law was written in one sentence that decriminalized marijuana, if I'd have an issue with it, personally. Mm-hmm. But Prop 205 is such a big 20-something page bill that creates a whole new department of the government, and there's a lot of other things with it. And I don't think that it's going to do anything to stop the criminal enterprises out there. There's still going to be the criminal syndicates out there making money off marijuana and other drugs. So I don't know if it's going to solve that problem.
Well, when we look at the end of prohibition of marijuana, we expect there to be a transition period, and many of the states were currently in that transition period, just like there was a transition period from the end of alcohol prohibition. You know, when they ended alcohol prohibition, it didn't suddenly become a clean market like we see today. There was a transition of moving the Al Capones out of that marketplace and into legal purveyors that are respectable members of our society. But to this day, you don't exactly see the Coors Light and other like cartels shooting it out in our streets like you do with marijuana.
I agree, but at the same time, it also didn't end the Al Capones of the world. They just went on to other criminal syndicates. It just wasn't alcohol anymore. My question about this, and I'm going to tell you what the negatives are from my perspective, and I want to give you all the time in the world to refute them. Creates a big department of the government. People in Colorado are saying they're not getting the money into the schools that they thought they were. Is this something you believe is going to happen over time, and it's just costing more up front?
Well, let's talk about that money in schools in Colorado, because that's an important issue. So the advertisements that the No campaign has been running on TV are completely false, and I'm going to explain why. So in Colorado, their tax allocation of dollars, only the first $40 million can go to schools. Okay. It's capped at $40 million. They have about a $66 million budget surplus on their marijuana fund, but only the first $40 million can go to schools. And then there's a grant application process that the school districts apply to the state from that marijuana fund for those dollars. That grant process is intentionally designed to favor rural school districts that need the money. So when you see these commercials say Denver schools got nothing, well, that's true, because they also didn't apply for any of the money. So it's extremely misleading. It simply isn't truthful.
So if the money is there that we can go to the schools,
and it is
generating the money, the schools just either aren't applying for it or aren't taking the right steps to get the money.
Those rural schools are getting the money.
Okay.
All $40 million was allocated and actually went to the schools. Now they picked out one school district, Denver school district, that didn't get any money because they didn't apply for it either.
So they weren't complaining that they didn't get the money. They were being used for the campaign ads that they didn't get any money.
Absolutely.
Okay, so explain to me how we hear the word monopoly, that this is monopolizing with the existing medical marijuana facilities that are going to become now the legal stores for legal marijuana, that this is a monopoly now and is geared towards them and favors them over anybody else.
So this is an expansion of the medical marijuana program. That's the simple fact. So you're not going to have those existing medical marijuana purveyors excluded from a new marketplace, that this is an expansion of the existing program. So then when we start looking and saying, okay, how many stores are going to be allowed in this state? And we put the cap as 1/10 of the number of Series 9 liquor licenses, so it will go up over time. But currently it's about 150. There are currently 94 operating dispensaries in this state. So if we want to talk about expanding the program to simply have more dispensaries in the state, I'm thrilled to have that conversation. And this initiative allows for that expansion if the state sees a necessity for that. So this monopoly argument simply doesn't make sense. What we were trying to do by instituting that cap on that percentage terms was when we went up and we looked at Colorado and what's right, what's wrong, what's working well, what isn't. And we looked and we went to Denver and we saw that in Denver there are a heck of a lot of dispensaries. In fact, there are more dispensaries than there are Starbucks, Circle K's, McDonald's, and Subways combined. And we said, you know, we don't want that here in Arizona. We don't want these dispensaries on every other corner. We want a far more conservative law than what we saw in Colorado. So we put that cap that's in there for that purpose. Now, if we had gone the Colorado route, there's no question about it. The No campaign would be saying, hey, we're going to have dispensaries on every other corner. So
we
it's one of
probably would.
Yeah, and we probably would.
Well, if it's, but let me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if this is something that's no different than alcohol, what's the difference between having a bar on every corner and having a medical or a marijuana store on every corner? What's the difference?
Well, I don't want a bar on every other corner either.
But we have them.
Not necessarily. You know, cities are allowed to zone
Right.
and create zoning of where these things can be located, where they cannot be located, just like they can with these medical marijuana or these adult use marijuana dispensaries.
All right, take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about Prop 205, why the pro 205 crowd believes it should be legalized, and see if we can, if you're going to convince me to the other side before it's over. We'll be back. With me is JP Holyoak. He is the head of, is it Yes on 205? Is it
I'm
the
the
name?
chairman of the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol.
Okay. And so pro on Prop 205, which is legalization in the state. And two issues I'll bring up. One is I'm not a big fan of props. And the reason is it alters the Constitution. We know the legislature can't do anything within that law.
Well, no, it doesn't alter the Constitution. It's constitutionally protected. There's
correct.
a difference. Yeah.
All right, it protects this that can't do anything but to further the cause or further the proposition. What happened with medical marijuana, we were told when it was passed, it's not going to be just a limited number of doctors. You're going to have a 2-year relationship with your doctor in order to qualify to get this recommendation from a doctor. After it was passed, they said, well, you know what, that's not really fair. If somebody gets sick now, why should they have to wait 2 years? And it was changed to favor the law and make it easier to get medical marijuana.
No, actually, it was never changed. The law, no, if you go back and read Proposition 203, that 2-year thing that you mentioned there was not mentioned in the law one bit. It did not exist.
But it was mentioned in the ad campaign because I believed it was in the paperwork.
No.
Then where do we pull it from? I mean, we didn't pull that out of air.
I don't know where you got that from, but it certainly wasn't part of the law, nor was it part of the rules process.
So how do we know if, let's say, just hypothetically, we're hearing all about the edibles and people are worried about the edibles and the potency of the edibles. If the legislature says, like you said, we looked at Colorado and there's some things we wanted to do differently. This law goes into effect and the legislature wants to say, we need to regulate this or we need to do that. What mechanism is in place to change and tweak things because you're not really able to without another proposition?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So every single proposition that successfully passed the ballot box by the voters represents a failure by our state legislature to do its job.
No doubt. I absolutely agree with that statement.
And they've had the opportunity, at least in the last 2 legislative sessions, to be able to push through their own adult use marijuana program that was pushed by certain state legislators introduced that legislation. It didn't even make it out of a committee hearing. So they simply shut it down and they blocked it.
Okay.
Now, when we look at Proposition 105, which is the Voter Protection Act, that actually exists simply and solely because of marijuana. So in 1996, Arizona voters passed the first medical marijuana law. The very next legislative session, approximately 2 months later, the legislature came in and they said, you know what, voters, we have no regard for what you have to say about this issue, and they wiped the law from the books. They were upset about it. So then John Sperling, founder of University of Phoenix, came back at the next opportunity, which was 1998, and he put on the ballot the Voter Protection Act that said, hey, legislators, when you fail to do your job and instead the citizens do it for you, you cannot come back and undo what the citizens fixed on your behalf.
Which I have no problem with.
That's why it exists.
But am I wrong in saying if they want to go in and restrict in some way because it's better, and even if you agreed after the program's been in place, they can't go in and restrict because of that Voter Protection Act? So that's just kind of a downside, a negative consequence of a good Voter Protection Act?
Well, it's a great Voter Protection Act that's absolutely necessary.
Right, I agree.
But the state legislators can do anything that they want to this with 3/4 majority, so it needs bipartisan support, and it has to be in furtherance of the act. If they want to try to restrict things, they're going to have to go back to the voters and say, hey, voters, we want to make these changes. The voters put the law in the books. Now, they don't have to go through the whole campaign process like we did. They don't have to collect the signatures. They don't have to do any of these things. Any state legislator can simply refer to the ballot a House concurrent resolution and allow the voters to say, hey, do you want to make these changes? And if it's something that makes sense, well, of course they should do that, and they have the ability to do it, and it's relatively easy for them to do it.
Well, that's my issue, is it's not as easy as if they created the law. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Take it up in the legislature. Yeah. Let's get a vote on the floor of the House and the Senate. Let's get it on the governor's desk. No issue with that whatsoever. Right. Lastly, because we've got a couple of minutes left, the numbers that are being touted on the No on 205 about ages and addiction and use is up among minors, among younger people.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think that that's a really important topic. This is the marijuana use among youth in Colorado, the Healthy Kids Colorado survey. And it showed that teenage use actually went down since their legalization, not up.
So where are they getting their numbers from?
So they're pulling their numbers from what's called a SAMHSA study. It's a federal government study, and it pulled about 400 kids in the state of Colorado, and that's where they got their data from. Whereas this survey, this study, was about 17,000 kids. So they're touting their study, saying, hey, our study is so great, but it only pulled 400 kids from the state, whereas the state of Colorado does their own surveys with their students of 17,000 of them, and lo and behold, it actually went down, not up. So it's battling studies, and so we have a choice. We can either accept the study of less than 400 kids, or we can accept the study with 17,000 kids.
All right, I have about 30 seconds left. With that, when you look at this law and the creation of the overseers, who oversees this? Who regulates and oversees just like the Department of Alcohol or whatever you want to call it? Who does it?
So we created,
who are they?
We created a commission that's very similar to the Liquor Board that will oversee this program. Those commission members are seated by the governor. They're appointed by the governor. They must be bipartisan. They must come from different parts of the state and be of different political parties. So certainly whoever the sitting governor is, whether it's now or 50 years from now, simply can't appoint political cronies for them.
All right, if they want to go, last chance, website if people want to go and hear your side of the argument on why it should be legalized.
Yeah. RegulateMarijuanaInArizona.org. It's a long one, but it's RegulateMarijuanaInArizona.org. It's pretty simple. All the facts are laid out, right, and it certainly debunks many of the lies that are being told by the no side.
JP Holyoak, thanks.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mike.
it. We'll be back. Welcome back. It's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. We call it From Arizona for America. It's our way to congratulate and thank the fine Arizona men and women who have recently graduated from boot camp and are now serving in our country's military. So please join me in honoring U.S. Army Private Nathan Roski from Boulder Creek High School in Anthem, Airman First Class Kelvin Saucedo from Cesar Chavez High School in Levine, and Airman Dante Williams from Agua Fria High School in Avondale. For a list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, go to the Mik Broomhead Show page at aztv.com. We'll be back in a moment with Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. Don't go away. Absolutely my favorite part of the show, and it's a great one this week. We call it Broomhead's Best.
1 second remaining in the second overtime. Here's Perry to Gar Hurd. Here's the jump shot. Good! It's good! It counts! Gar Hurd ties it!
This week, it's none other than Suns legend Al McCoy, the announcer, the voice of the Phoenix Suns for so many years. He is a great ambassador for the Phoenix Suns, for basketball in general, and for the state of Arizona. He is being inducted into the Suns Ring of Honor. He's the 15th person to be inducted. It should have happened years before. I have had the great pleasure of working with Al on a couple of different projects, and he really is a gentleman, just a terrific human being. Now it's burning up the internet. We call it #this. We're calling it #Trump Hollywood Star. Somebody decided they hated Trump so much, they went to his star on the Walk of Fame, put cones around it like they were a construction worker, and completely destroyed it with a pickaxe. And they took a video of it. So you got to see it. This is just kind of the hatred that's out there. That's what they did to Donald Trump's Walk of Fame. We'll be back here in a moment to close out the show. Don't go away. Before we close out the show, marijuana is a big issue. Colorado's legalized it. I'm no on 205. I'm still no on this. I don't like this law at all, and I don't like our propositional form of government. I don't like the idea that the legislature can't just go back and do their jobs and regulate any of this. It's got to go back to the voters. So I'm still going to vote no on 205, but be an informed voter. JP Holyoak, great guest, very passionate about what he believes, and a good man. I just disagree with him on this issue right now. Be an informed voter. Get out there and vote. You should be doing that, your civic duty. We'll be back next week. God bless.
Get more of Mik Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.